Okay, we did the sugya yesterday. We began the sugya of mamzeris. We saw through a machloikis between Rabbi Akiva, who said chayve lavim would create mamzeris, the chachamim, who are also known as Shimon HaTeimani, who says chayve krisis would create mamzeris, and that's who we paskin like. And the Muslimian shita would be shita Rabbi Yeshua, that only chayve mises bezin would create mamzeris. The Gemara wanted to suggest that everyone would be moida, that by Masek Rushasai, that the child will be a pogum, even though it will be a mamzer. The child, we had questions on that. The Gemara then decided that maybe it's the case of if you bal chayve krisis, that the vlad is a pogum. Even like Rabbi Yeshua, who says that the child is not a mamzer, he would agree the child is a pogum, and a pogum would be a child that is pasal le kahuna. Today we have a very fascinating share. It's because it's something that we all know, but we don't know why we know it. We all know that if an akum or an eved, and then an eved kanaini who's mechiv mitzvahs kiisha, but nonetheless is an eved, right? He's quasi Jew, right? Is ba Abbas Yisrael, the vlad is kosher. That as long as the mother is Jewish, the child is Jewish. It is in fact a huge machloikis amoroyim to that, a huge machloikis amoroyim. Huge. I mean, the biggest hit is in the history of Klal Yisrael, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Rav, Shmuel, on two sides of the coin, whether an Eved or an Akum, Haba Abbas Yisrael, whether the child is a mamzer or not. Again, so therefore we begin on Mem Dalit Amid Beis, 3 lines to the bottom. Amar Rabba Bar Chana Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Bar Chana, the name of the great Amor Rabbi Yochanan, Hakol Moedim, everyone's Moedah. The Eved Abba Abbas Yisrael should have Vlad Mamsa. So everyone's moida. Now, who's the everyone that's moida? Now, let's go ahead and try to give it a framework. Is it chayve Mrs. Bezdin for if there's a goy who comes onto a yid? No. Chayve Koris? No. Chayve Lavim? Efsha. Good. Chayve Lavim. Okay. So now. Yeah, everyone's moida that Eved Vayvikechav Ma'Abba Abbas Yisrael have Vlad Mamzer. Man hakol moedim. Who is everyone over here who would agree to this? Says the Gemara, it's Shimon HaTeimani. That's the sheet of that the Mamzer comes from Chayve Krisis. The Afagav Dama Shimon HaTeimani, a Mamzer Mechayve Lavim. The Mamzer doesn't come from Chayve Lavim, only from Chayve Krisis. Hanimili Amid Aleph Mechayve Lavim the Tafsiba Kedushin. That's only Chayve Lavim that Kedushin would be toifes. If a kohen goes ahead and it's Mekadesh a Gerusha, she would need a get. If he would die, she would fall to Yibum. So therefore, since Kedushin is Taifis, there it does not create Mamzeris. Mashenkin Aval Hacha over here, by if an Eved or a Goy would give Kedushin to a Jewish woman, since Kedushin is not Tofes, it's not, the possibility doesn't exist for them entering marriage with Abbas Yisrael. Kechayve Krisis Nami, it's like Chayve Krisis. So a very interesting svara given by Rabbi Yochanan. In other words, as we said yesterday, this inyan of mamzeris is very much dependent upon whether Kiddushin is taifas or not. In other words, if the union, even though God doesn't bless the union, would be a halachic union, Hashem doesn't want a kohen to marry a gerusha. He doesn't. It's usher. It's a lav. But if in fact they do, so obviously there is some, let's say, sanctity to that marriage, and therefore the child would not be a mamzer. It makes a lot of sense like that. Conversely, if Hashem does not condone this marriage, so therefore, if a man is Mekadesh his sister, therefore, since that union, it doesn't exist, the union, halachically. It doesn't exist. Therefore, the child is a mamzer. So very much, it's Hava Hatalia, very much one depends upon the other. Very geschmack. So over here, even though you're missing the fact that it's not Chayve Krisos, it's only Chayve Lavim, Conversely, you don't have the sanctity of marriage, and therefore this union is a union that would create mamzeris. That's a very interesting svara. Why an Eved va'akam Abbas Yisrael, the child should be a mamzer, despite the fact that it's only Chayve Lavim, since you don't have the fact that the marriage is sanctified at all. It doesn't exist. Since it doesn't exist, that union creates a child that's a mamzer. That would be the svara, and it's a very good svara. It's very logical based upon the logistics that we're explaining the whole sugya. It would appear to make a lot of sense. Says the Gemara. However, again, at the end of the day, it's not so pasha. Even though the svara, as I just explained it, it even made more sense to me now as I explained it than when I learned it. It began making more sense to me. But again, as we're going to see, it's not like that. Mesave, we're going to ask a question on this. Now, this is again Shimon HaTeimani. You're telling me Shimon HaTeimani, who says that Mamzeris is what from? Is from Chayvei Krisis, would agree over here. We're going to disprove that. Mesave. Good. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, no, ein mamzer ella mimi sheisuroi issa erva v'inish karis. We don't look at the fact whether kedushin is kedushin. We look at the fact that what we look at the criteria when they're together. Is it a union of erva and a union of karis? That's it. We don't look at we don't look at tafsi about kedushin. We look at what whether or not this is krisus or not. And since Eved va'akum haba bas Yisrael, it's not krisus. Therefore, the child's not a mamzer. This is Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda. Now, the idea is that even though it's Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon HaTeimani would apparently agree with this because he's the one who says mamzeris comes from chayvei karis. So therefore, if you're telling me that it comes from chayvei karis, the criteria of whether Toivus B'Kedushin is not the criteria; it's the krisis part. So if Shimon HaTeimani would agree with Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, and therefore we're back to who's that kol moedim? You, Rabbi Yochanan, said everyone's moida. That even though what it's not mamzeris in this union, it usually is not mamzeris. By this union, it is mamzeris. It can't be Shimon HaTeimani. He would disagree. He would say the vlad would be kasha. Ella Rabbi Yosef mana kol moedim. Who is that kol moedim that what? Eved va'akum abba bas Yisrael Vlad is a mamzer, is Rabbi. It's the great Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Afal gav the Rabbi Omer, even though Rabbi HaKadosh is of the opinion, Ein advar malolu amur mel de Rabbi Akiva, what's under discussion? If you look at Rashi tells us the Perek Rabbi Gamliel ein bia acha chalitza. If man goes ahead and lives with his chalutza, the mchalatz lezu ubol lezu ein it tzrichi men a get. If he gives chalitza to one and it's boiled another, he doesn't need to get. The Ka'amar ain't advar lo amurim the bia acha chalitza like tasav el Rabbi Akiva. That in other words, after you give chalitza, if you do, it's issa. If you're going to go ahead and boil your chalutza, so according to Rabbi Akiva, then the child will be a mamzer, right? Why? Because the kedushin is not toifus. Ain't advar lo el Rabbi Akiva. Shayu oisa chalutza ke'erva, right? V'lei loy svirlei. Right, and he doesn't hold like that. They don't hold like that. However, they would be moida. Good. So in other words, even though they don't hold that kedushin's types of b'chavei lavim, therefore it's not a mamzer, they would be moida. Eved haba bas Yisrael avad is mamzer. So now going back to the beginning of shir, Rabbi Yochanan said hakol moidim that Eved va'akim haba bas Yisrael avad mamzer. It's not Shimon HaTeimani. It's Rabbi. It's Rabbi. Rabbi would agree that even though it's not chayvei karis, the vlad would be a mamzer. Yosef Rabdimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef Rabdi the Yosef Rabdimi Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Avdimi Mishum Rabbeinu, and the Rabbeinu is Rabbi. So here's your raya to Rabbi, and the other halakha moedim of Rabbi Yochanan is Rabbi. Good. So all we saw today's shir is that even though mamzeris is usually only from chayvei karis, because we pass like the chachamim, Eved Bo Bas Yisrael the vlad is a mamza according to Rabbi. According to Rabbi, that's what we're saying. And it's important. The name is important. Rabbi Acha Bar Sar Habira, Rav Tamchem Berei de Rav Chia, Ish Kfar Aku. These were the two great people, and obviously they were more than just learning in the base medrash because they were Isaac with Sarchei Tzibor. Parku Hanu Shavyasa, they went ahead and redeemed these unfortunate captives. The Asimi Armon to Tveria. They came from the city of Armon to Tveria, and they were paid to them. One of them had been impregnated by a guy. They were captive. A guy obviously misused her and impregnated her, and she wanted to know what's the status of the baby in her womb. So now they came in front of Rav Ami, and I told them, Amalahu, Rabbi Yochanan, listen to these people, guys. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Loza, Rabbi Loza ben Padas, Rabbi Chanina, the army of Kechavim, every going to buy Mamza. So you have lots of Mamza. So it wasn't enough to paskin he had to go ahead and start counting the great people. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Chanina, they all held the trials of Mamza. Some Rabbi Yosef, says Rabbi Yosef, Revusa the Machshav Gavrei. It's a chiddush to go ahead and Machshav the Gavrei. In other words, you're telling us the lineup, the all-star lineup, right? You're telling the lineup, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Lazar. You're giving us this all-star lineup of great Amoraim who say the child is a Mamza. I'll give you an all-star lineup that says the child's kosher. I'll give you a lineup that says the child is kosher. Harav, listen to these heavy hitters. Rav, Shmuel, Bavel, Rabbi Shmuel Levi, Bar Kapara, Beretz Yisrael. V'imi others say Chalufi, switch around. Bar Kapara, Va'ilei Ziknei Dorim. If it wasn't Bar Kapara, but it was the Canaan of Dorim. The Amri Ovi Chav Me'ever Abba by Yisrael. Avad Kasha. So just because you're quoting people, I can quote you. I can give you this. You give me the American League, I can give you the National League. I can give you an all-star lineup also. So that's not doing it. Ella, I agree in the Pesach, but not because of what of the lineup. Ella, Rabbi Yosef, Rebbe, you know why the child's a mamza? Because Rebbe said, Vlad is a mamza. Now, how do we know that was Rebbe's opinion? The Chiyasar Avdimi, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi, Mishum Rabbeinu, Mishum Rabbeinu, whose Rabbeinu is Rebbe, Vlad is a mamza. Good. So therefore, unfortunately, this poor girl who had been impregnated by a guy, she told the child as a mamza. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, I mean, no. Havad mekulkel. The Vlad is mekulkel. He's corrupt, meaning he's a pogrom, but he's not a mamza. He's not a mamza. Leman. What do you mean he's mekulkel? Ilem kahal, that he can't marry the kahal. In other words, he's a mamzer. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was listed above as one in Rav Yosef's all-star team. He was listed as Vlad Kasha. So when he said Mekulkul, must be El Kahuna, must be a pogrom that can't marry into Kuna. Okay? The Kulu Amroy the Machshi Moidesh Vlad Pogrom Likahuna. Even though all the great people who said Eved Va'akam above Yisrael, the Vlad is a Kasha, it's only Indian Vlad, it's not a Mamza that can marry into Kal Hashem. But the Indian being a pogrom, not being unable to marry the Kahuna, they would all agree that he can marry the Kahuna. And where do we know they can marry the Kahuna? From our famous Kal V'chomer from yesterday, guys. Our famous Kal V'chomer. The Kal V'chomer, me almana. Uma almana l'koyin gadol. She'ein isur shava b'kol. As we said yesterday, almana to l'koyin gadol is not a universal law. It's only what? Unique to the koyin gadol. Nonetheless, b'na pogrom, the child from that union is chalol, cannot marry into the kuna. Zu. But this one who was over on being with a guy, it's also to marry a guy. She's surah shava b'chol. No one can marry a guy. Ein adin shebana pogrom. It's not a kal v'chomer that the bana should be a pogrom. So therefore, even though it's not a mamzer, the child's a pogrom. You'll ask on the kal v'chomer like we did yesterday. Mala amonel kain gadol shekain he atzon eschaleles. She becomes a chalol. Says this woman also kivin shenivla pasla. She's a zayna now, guys. Remember we spoke. She's a zayna. That what? Since she was with a guy, she's a pasal l'kahuna. So very good. So we've concluded that we have a huge machlokes amoraim, and we have the statement of the great Tana, Rabbi Yehuda HaKadosh, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, right, the great Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, that the child is a mamza. Now, don't leave your seats yet. Right. Dam Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon, Minayin la'ovi kechav v'ovi al kahenes al avia al Yisrael shepsula, that the apostle become, meaning they become a zayna, that shnemar ubas kain kisiel amona gerusha. Bas kain, let's say she was married to a she was the daughter of a kain. She could eat truma. She gets married to Yisrael, she can't. If she goes home, if she gets divorced or becomes a widow and there's no children, she goes back home. When is that? That's mishiyeshle almanas gerishin. That's only if she was living with a person that's possible to go ahead and divorce her or die and create her zamana. There's no din of there's no marriage, so there's no din of you being an almana, and there's no din of gerishin for sure. So therefore, she would not go back home to daddy to eat truma. Why? Because she is puzzle, because she was mischalel for living with a guy. So therefore, the almana is mischaleles. She's michaleles. Mala almana that's what to a kain gadol. It's not shava but kol, unique only to him, and nonetheless the child's a pogim. Therefore, also over here, where it's a universal thing about being with a guy, that child is a pogum. Good. Now, Amalei Abaya, my chos is the samcha ad Rav Dimi That why now Rav Dimi is the one who came up with Bavel to report Rebbe's Shita. Why are we Samech on Rav Dimi? Samech ad Ravin. Let's be Samech on Ravin, who's going to give us a totally different opinion as to what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi held. The Chiasa Ravin, when Ravin came, Amar Reb Nasin, Amar, he said, Reb Nasin for Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Moirimba lehetera, that a child, Evid va'akam above Yisrael, Rebbe said is kosher. So we have machlokas between Ravin and Rav Dimi as to what Rebbe held, whether the child is kosher or the child is Vada Mamza. Uman Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi, who's Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi? Is Rebbe. The Af Rav Moira Bahatera, Rav also said that the child is kosher. Right? Again, guys, this is the way you know that the child that comes from a Jewish woman, the child's kosher. Mamish, this is a huge machlek samurai across the board. It's unbelievable. And for all intents and purposes, Bisman Hazeh, that's what we do. Hahud Asla Kamei the Rav, Amalei, every Chavim, every about Israel, Mahu, what's the din? Amalei, Havlad Kosher. That was again, Rabbi Yosef quoted Rabbi Shmuel above and said the Rav is kosher. The child is kosher. Amalei, so this person said, this person came, he was the product of that union. He was the product of that union. His father was a guy, his mother was a Yid, and he came in front of Rav, and he said he said you're kosher. He said the child is kosher. So Amalei, so this man, this mechutzif said to Rav, in Cain, if I'm kosher, havli barta, give me your daughter. Give me your daughter in marriage. So lo yavinu lach. Rav wasn't given the daughter in marriage. So Amasimi bar chiyel Rav. Ami inshi. Okay, this seems to be a mashal, a very funny mashal. People are going to say, Gamla b'modai akaba rakta. A camel in Madai goes ahead and dances with its four legs, dances within a kav. And that's a funny lashon. Now here, hakaba, you have the kav. V'hagamla, you have the gomel. V'hamadai, flei rakta. Basically, you said the chiddush. Therefore, if you said the chiddush, go ahead and act upon the chiddush. Show everybody that this guy is kosher by letting marry your daughter. So Amalei, Rav told Rav Simi, Ina have ki Yeshua ben Nun. If this person would be a godly god like Yeshua ben Nun, lo yavina le barti. I wouldn't give my daughter to the marriage. Amalei, so Simi's Bachia said, Yavik Yeshua ben Nun, right? If he was like Yeshua ben Nun, Imar lo yavle, achrina yavle. So good, you wouldn't give her in shidduch, but other would. Hi, Imar lo yavle, achrina lo yavle. If you don't go ahead and give it, no one else is going to give it. In other words, they're going to say that, why should we give it? If Rav's not going to give it, and it's based upon his psak, then we won't give it either. So in other words, give your child. So Lavi Ka'azl, this guy was not leaving the Kameh, he was chepping Rav, and obviously he crossed the line. And it's not good to fool around with. When you fool around with Amoraim of this status, it never has. Do you remember there was a commercial on television? It's not good to fool around with Mother Nature, right? Well, it's not good to fool around with Father Amoraim. So anyway, this guy would not take no for an answer. Like Havi Kozl Mechamei, Yov Beit Eine, V'Shachav. Rav looked at him and he died. Usually it says he looked at him and became a pile of bones. But here it says he looked at him and he died. Okay, what he did wrong, I'm not sure. This must be this. Look at the article. The Afra of Masna Moira Bala Terror of Masna also was Moira Leheter, that the child was kosher. Afra of Yehuda Moira Bala Terror. So again, you're getting different guys. This is huge machlokes, huge. And you're getting the biggest Amoraim saying this Heta. Chiyasel Kamei the Rabbi Yehuda, the child that was born from this union came from the Rabbi Yehuda. Amalei. So Rabbi Yehuda told him, gave him advice. Zil itamer, go hard your yichus. It's go. Don't tell anyone about yourself. We'll marry someone who in the same situation that a Jewish girl who came from the father was a guy. When he came from the Rava gave him the same advice. Either go to a place in Golos so people don't know who you are and then get married. Marry someone that was similar to you. That's father was a guy. The town of Mechasya, they sent the question Rabbi in front of Rava. Now we're digressing. If a man owns, it's digressing, not too much of a digression. If a man goes ahead and has a partnership in an Eved, now an Eved Kanani is mechuyev mitzvahs keisha. He gave him a bismillah, you toivel. Upon being freed, which you're not supposed to do, but upon being freed, he goes to the mikveh and he becomes a full-fledged Jew. He becomes a full-fledged Jew. So let's say I and Heshi would own an Eved in partnership, and Heshi would free his Eved. So mitzad that I still own half of the Eved, it's an Eved. Mitzad that Heshi went ahead and freed that part, he's a ben chayv and he's free. So I got a person here who is half and half. He's half a Jew and half a guy. What happens if he would live with a Jew? What would the din be? So he would tell me double pashit. According to the people who say that it's kasha, kol sheken is kasha. Madach, a full-fledged eved, the child is kasha. Certainly half a yid and half an eved, the child should be kasha. But as always, when it comes to Gemara, nothing is so pashit. Says the Gemara. Vaita. So Sholchalei ben Mechasya, they sent the following to Rabbi. Misha Chesiev Eved v'Chesiev ben Chayrin. Someone was half and half. Haba Bas Yisrael, Lizard Bas Yisrael. Ma, what's the din? So Amalahu, Rabbi told him this svara I just told you. Hashta Eved Kula Aminon. We say Chesiev boy. If it's a full-fledged Eved, the child is Chasha. You have to tell me Chesiev. So Rabbi Yosef says, Morid the Shmaitza. Who is the master of the sugya? Who's the one who told the sugya over to us? Manu, it's Rabbi Yehuda. I vom Rabbi Yehuda Misha Chetzev ben Chayrin. Habo Abbas Yisrael. Oisev Vlad Eilon Takana. Meaning that child's a mamza. So in other words, you Rabbi are saying unequivocally that for sure in Svara the child should be kasha because a full-fledged Eved the child's kasha. Rabbi Yehuda is the master of the sugya, and he's saying the child's a mamza. Now, what's the svara to make the child a mamza? So listen to this very interesting svara, right? So I'm Rabbi Yehuda Misha Chetzev ben Chayrin. Kiyet Mad Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so now when do we learn Rabbi Yehuda's case? So we want to say the child taka is kasha, but when we learn Rabbi Yehuda's case, going to Kiddush Bas Yisrael, he just until now we've been discussing where there was no act of kiddushin. There was simply the fact that the guy or the Eved was with the Bas Yisrael. Over here, this Chatzi Eved went ahead and Chatzi Yisrael will mekadesh this girl, gave a kesef kiddushin. Now, the Nimsa Sad Avdus Sheboy, his Sad Avdus is coming along, and Mishtamish Be'eshish. Guys, listen to this. When he was a full-fledged Eved or Goy, there wasn't a Sad of Kedusha there whatsoever. Mashenkin over here, since it's half and half, you will Makadish the woman, so the half of the Jew that was Makadish the woman creates the fact that what? She's now a Jewish woman who's married. What's the halach of a married woman? That child's a mamza. So not because it's an Eved Haba Abbas Yisrael, that's an Eishes Ish, the child is going to be a mamza. Until now, we've been discussing a penuya, a girl who was a penuya, meaning unmarried. Over here, however, we're saying Rabbi Yehuda would say the game changes. If the woman is an Eishes Ish, then the child would be a mamza. So again, until now, we've been saying Eved Haba Abbas Yisrael, the Vlad is kosher, according to that shita, is only because the girl was a penuya. She was not married. If the girl was married to a man and the Eved's with the girl, then the Akmas with the girl, the child would be a mamza. That's what we're saying right now. So Rabbi Yehuda's case, since there's a Eishes Ish, why? Because the half Jewish part was Makadish. Therefore, what? We're going to say that the child's a mamza. That's the svara now to say we're more machman by half and half than by a full-fledged Eved where there's no kedusha whatsoever to the woman. So kiyet mad the Rabbi who they're going to kiddush Bas Yisrael, the nimtzat sad avdus, the fact that Eved part that wasn't freed, shaboy mishtamis be'eshes ish, that there was mekudish al yedei the half Jewish part, the half ben chayrin part. Questions the Gemara, where do you make this chilik? This is important. Says Nardoi in the name of Rabbi Yaakov, L'divrei ha-paisel, paisel afilu b'pnuya. Those opinions that had held that the child is a mamzer would hold the child as a mamzer, even if the woman was what? Was a pnuya, even if there was not what? And even if she wasn't a married woman. L'divrei ha-machsher, loitaman the Amu holds that Ever v'akam above I saw the side is kasha, machsher afilu be'eshes ish. They learn from Eishes Ish. So the chilik you're making now, guys, is not a chilik. Outside. You're being mechadish a tremendous thing right now. You're saying the following. You're saying the status of the woman comes into play ascertaining whether the child is a mamzer or not. Until now, we've learned it hasn't been speaking. We assume that there's no difference. We assume that it only depends upon the Eved or the Akam. In other words, whatever these are not Jewish people. So therefore, if they're with a Bas Yisrael, I don't care about the status of the Bas Yisrael. Since he's only an Eved v'Akum, the child's going to be kosher. That's what we held. That's what we held. Came along the Gemara and said, no, it's not true. That machloikis we've had until now is only because the child is a penuya. Then we have machloikis whether the child is a mamzer or not, or kosher. But she is a free woman. However, if she was an Eishes Ish, there would be no machloikis. If she's an Eishes Ish, everyone would hold the union would create mamzeres. Fred the Gemara now, it's not true. Says Rav Nadoyim, the name of Rabbi Yaakov, it doesn't depend upon the status of the woman. It depends upon how do you view the Eved V'Akum. Do you view since Kedushin's not Toifis, it is a mamza, or since Kedushin, or we don't care about Kedushin, we only care about Chayve Krisus. In other words, that's the different criteria, but not the fact that whether she's a Pnuya or not, or doesn't make a difference. So that's what the Gemara asks right now. So back to the original question: how can you hold an Eved V'Akum above Bas Yisrael? The child is what? Is a mamzer, and you can't tell me it's speaking with what? You Makadosh and Eshes. Who cares about being an Eshes? It doesn't make a difference. The lashon of the Gemara, the divrei ha paisel. The ones Mandiyamo says the child is a mamzer when Eved Akum Bas Yisrael paisel afila pnuya. They would hold the child as a mamzer even if the woman is unmarried. The divrei ha machshe, the one that says the child is a kosher, machshe afila beishes ish, that even if the woman's married, the child will be kosher. Ushneim lo lamdu ela me'eshesav. Guys, the sugya of mamzeris depends upon a stepmother. If you look at Rashi tells us ela me'eshesav. The Mamzeris Ligaboksiv. The parsha of Mamzeris is written by that. It says what the Chsiv it says in the Torah. La yikach ish es eshes aviv. A person should not take his father's wife, even if it's not his mother. He should not live with his father's wife. The Samachle and juxtaposed to that, it says La yav mamza v'kal Hashem. Okay, so we have we have right now that why in the world would the child be like Rabbi Yehuda chetzi eved chetzi min chayrin? Why would the child be a mamzer? Because according to it doesn't make a difference whether the woman's married or not married. So why would the child be a mamzer? That's what it's under discussion right now. Says the Gemara. They learn it from Eshesav. The pasuk says a person should take Eshes Aviv, and then it says La Yav Mamzer B'Kal Hashem. Man de pasol, the one that says the child is a mamzer, Sava ma Eshes Av, Delay Tafsi Ba Kedushin, Havlad Mamzer, Av Kol Delay Tafsi Ba Kedushin, Havlad Mamzer. The criteria whether the Kedushin is typhus or not, we've just discussed constantly. Man de Machshe, the one that says the child will be kosher. Sava ma Eshes Av Delay Tafsi Ba Kedushin. It has to be to them's not typhus Kedushin. La achrina tafsi by kedushin, but others would be. La fuki evi kechavim ve'eved le tafsi by kedushin klal. In other words, eved v'akum, it's not typhus by kedushin at all. So there's not the problem of mamzeris. So guys, it doesn't make any sense now. If you look at eved v'akum haba bas Yisrael chatzi eved chatzi basvayrim, okay, there's no chi of krisus there, and there's no tefisas kedushin over there. So why should the child be a mamzer? Why should the child be a mamzer? El Kiyat Mad Rabbi Yehuda, if you want to go ahead and apply Rabbi Yehuda's din of Chatzi Evet, Chatzi Basfarim, if you want to go ahead and apply that din, Kigoin Sheba al Eshes Ish. Okay, he lived with an Eshes Ish. V'nimtza, in other words, he wasn't Mekadesha. She was an Eshes Ish. V'nimtza tzadcherish sheboy mishtamis be'eshes Ish. So it's not the Eved part, guys, that's the problem. It's the Jewish part that's the problem. So in our scenario, I free my half, Heshi freed his half. Heshi's half is a Jew. This Jew is living with an Eshes Ish. If she's an Eshes Ish, then the Jewish part is creating, not the Eved, that part's creating the Mamzeris. Until now, we thought, guys, it's the Eved part that's creating Mamzeris. You tell me the Eved, no, can't create Mamzeris, either because it's not Taifsa but Kedushin, or it's not Chayve Karis. But you know what? If there is a Chi of Mises B'dei Shemayim, if a man's with an Eshes Ish, it's a Mises B'dei Shemayim. Therefore, the Chayiv Chenek. So therefore, in that case, what? You be chai. So that's the reason. Good. It says the Gemara Vayik. Ravina, says Ravina, Amali Rav Gaza, Ravina said to me, Rav Gaza, Ikla Rabbi Yossi bar Ravin la'asrin. So he came to our place. Rabbi Yossi bar Ravin came to our place. Vavi uvda b'pnuya. And there was a case with an unmarried girl that an Oived Kichavim was with her. And they asked the Shaila to what Rabbi Yossi. And he said the child was kosher. Ube'eshes ish. And there was a Maisuat with he was Eshes ish, that was a married woman who puzzle. And he said it's puzzle. So he's arguing, guys. He's arguing on Rav Nardoi, Rav Yaakov. Again, what would the Nardoi said the name of Yaakov? The one that says it's puzzle even by what? By a pnuya. And the one that says it's kosher would be kosher by Eshes ish. Rav Yosef is making a chilik. When is the child kosher? That's only if the woman is not married. But if the woman is married, then the child is a mamza. So he's arguing on Rav Nadoi's the chiddush of Rav Nadoi. Again, Rav Nadoi said, guys, we don't care about the woman's status. If the one who says it, meaning the one who says the child's a mamza, it's in all cases the child's a mamza, regardless of the status of the woman, married or unmarried. The one who says it's kosher would be machsha in all cases, even if the woman is married. However, Rabbi Yossi does make a chilik. No, he says the one who says the child is kosher is only if what? The one's a mamza, okay, it's always a mamza. The one that says it's kosher, that's only when the woman is a penuya, unmarried. But if the woman was an Eshes ish, then what? The child will be a mamza, disagreeing with Nardoi. Rav Sheshes Ladidi Amali Rav Gaza. Rav Sheshes is disagreeing with Ravina as to what Rav Gaza said. For Loi Rav Yossi bar Ovin, the Maisa wasn't Rav Yossi bar Ovin, but Ella Rav Yossi bar Zvida. It was Rav Yossi bar Zvida Have. For Achsha, and he was Machsha, Bein bePnuya, Bein be'Eshes ish. And he said whether the woman is married or not married, the child will be kosher. In other words, like Nardoi. In other words, like Nardoi, that the child is kosher in any which way. Amalei Rav Acha Brei the Rav Ravina Ikla Ameima Asrin. Ameima came to our place. Biachsher, and he was Machsher, Bein bePnuya, Bein be'Eshes ish. And guys, and here's we get the final say. V'Hilchasa Oived Kechavim ve'Eved Abba Bas Yisrael Havlad Kosher Bein bePnuya, Bein be'Eshes ish. Again, a long sugya, a long, huge machlokes between a lot of people, and that's the conclusion. Rav Achshrei Rav Mori Barachel. Now, Rav Mori Barachel, the father was a guy. His mother was Jewish. The father was a guy, and he was a Gadol Ad Ma'od. He was a huge person. He was Rami Bar Chama. He was Rami Barachel. He was great, and he appointed him. Rav appointed him Umanya beParsei de Bavel. He gave him a position of prominence. He was collecting. He was the money collector on the people in Bavel. Ve'Alpha Gav, it says the Amamar. When it comes to a melech, and here we're saying a melech is anyone who was given a position of prominence. It says the lashon of the pasuk is Soim Tosim Alecha Melech. Place you should place in yourself a king. Asher Yivcha Hashem Alekecha Boy Mikerav Achecha. It says from the midst of your brothers, guys. Mikerav Achecha Tosim Alecha Melech. Mikerav Achecha means it can't be a ger. It has to be mamish like a kosher v'yasha yid. So over here we have Mori Barachel, whose father was a goy, and nonetheless Rava put him in a position of being a gabbai tzedakah. So, and even though the Gemara says Taisim Alecha is mashma wat, you have to be Mikerev Achecha. Anyone who's given a position of prominence should be Mikerev Achecha. Kol Mesima Shatem Mesim Al You El Mikerev Achecha. All positions of prominence should be given to someone who is a full-fledged yid. Nonetheless, hi, Rav Mori Barachel, Kivin the Imo Yisrael. We just look at the mother status. We don't look at the father status. It's a full-fledged yid, and therefore he would be able to give him a position of prominence. Avdei Rav Chia bar Ami, the eved of Chia bar Ami. What happens? He went ahead and he married a guy, right? That was not toivel l'shem geris. Again, as we said, to be toivel, you have to be toivel l'shem geris. So atbelai he insasa. What he did was he put her in the mikvah because she's a nida. So he didn't go ahead and have a tefillah l'shem geris for conversion, but you did have a tefillah what for nida, for nida. So listen to the chiddush. Amr Rav Yosef, yachilnu lach shuri ba. I'm able to machsha her, ubebarta, and I'm able to machsha her daughter, the child born. Right? Ba, where's the source to be machsha her? You didn't have a tefillah l'shem geris. Kid Ravasi. Ravasi says, Mi like tovla nidusa. We're not toivel nidusa. We're going to see a mice later on. So since you were toivel nidus, once you toivel nidus, so that feel for nidus helps for gerus. And now that she's a yid and he's an eved, what's the halacha? Eved v'Yisrael abba bas Yisrael, Vlad is kasha. So Bibarta, the child that's born, the daughter, Vlad is kasha. So therefore, what I was able to master the whole thing. Ahudabi Korile Bar Amaisa. There was this person they used to call Bar Amaisa, the son of a guy, right? So Rav Asi said, Shaloi L'Tovla need this. You know why? Because he should be kasha. Me like Tovla Nidusa. This is what it wasn't. He was Tovla for Nida, since it was they were Kairin Ben Gavia. The mother was Tovla L'Shem Geber. Since the mother was Tovla L'Shem Nidas, it would help. Another Ma'asahud Avi Korile Bar Amma, because the father was not Toivel as a ger. Shlei Tovel of Kishigai L'Shem Geris. Rishu ben Levi Mile Tovel L'Kerry wasn't the father Toivel for Kerry. So once he was Toivel for Kerry, that would help out also for what? That would also help for Nidas. Okay, Abes Hashem will try to get in another share today.